Hello, feelings! How the hell are you? Yesterday, Amazon delivered 2 large boxes to my house, each filled with trade paperback copies of, you guessed it, the Black 2nd edition. This is the first time I've seen the actual paperback without the proof copy bounded all over it, so to say I'm excited is downplaying things at best. Man, Scott Pond created a damned beautiful book. Want a signed copy? Visit my store at payhip.com/Paul E. Cooley and get the 2nd edition paperback and the ebook to boot. Plus, it helps support the podcast and keeps the content coming into your ear holes. One more note before we get to the story. Every 3rd Saturday of the month, barring natural disasters, civil war, or alien invasions, you can find me at the Dead Robot Society live show on YouTube, where my co-host Terry Mixon and I discuss pop culture, writing, books, movies, you name it. We even occasionally take questions from our obnoxious listeners and viewers. Please join us for a 2-hour jaunt through the crazy. YouTube.com/DRS podcast. Been a long week, and now it's time to kick out this podcast and meet the B-Man for a drink. So I'll just say, be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 10 of Station 3. Chapter 11. By the time he and Harvey were halfway to the triage bubble, the man's steps had improved greatly. Zilph wasn't going to tell him the auto-assist had already terminated. Harvey now walked like a second-week trainee, which would make Reki happy. Zilph didn't know what Command had planned for them, but he imagined it would require more than first-day trainee skills. The lighting inside the triage bubble kicked on his helmet filters before they were 5 meters away. Li Xiao had amped the lights up to create a storm of UV to hopefully destroy any infectious agents.
"About time,"
Reki said over the general channel as they approached. Griggs snickered.
"My fault,"
Harvey said, his voice a little less confident. Zilph wondered if it was intentional.
"Took me a moment to figure out how to keep from swerving left." "Oh,"
Reki said, the word drawn out.
"He's one of those, Zilph?"
"One of those," Zilph said flatly. "Same as you, if I recall." Reki snorted.
"I am perfection and you know it."
Zilph turned to Harvey. "I've seen the recordings. She wasn't perfect." Reki had turned around to face Zilph. "Tell the truth," he said without inflection. "She still isn't."
"Uh-huh,"
Reki said.
"My status report will reflect this insolence." "Wait, she knows how to write?"
Yuri said. Zilph didn't see him immediately. The large EET stood near the bubble entrance, acting as a sort of sentry.
"All right,"
Reki said.
"Cut the chatter."
"Harvey, are you squared away?"
"As much as I can be without knowing why I'm wearing this suit."
Here it comes, Zilph thought, ready to parse her every word. He was sure the others were as well.
"Command is calling Station 1 a loss. We're to move to Station 3 immediately, but that's going to require a trip through Station 2.
Zilph already had 5 questions he wanted to ask, but kept his mouth shut. Reki expected them to act like professionals, so he would. She continued after a short breath.
Station 3 has 2 things we need: data collection and a personnel extraction. We're looking for any one of 7 people from Station 3's science and research team. While we already have one of them in custody,"
She gestured to the bubble.
"he's a bit uncooperative, although he has stated that his colleagues are still alive."
"Wait," Zilph said. "The guy I tranked in the barracks?" Reki nodded.
"He's an engineer from Station 3, but he's gone completely insane."
Yuri cleared his throat.
"How did he get into Station 1?
Reki shook her head.
"Don't know and don't care."
She paused for a moment, as if waiting for another question, but no one spoke.
2 more things. We need to bring the comms array up in Station 2 so we have a reliable QE link. We'll hit that on the way to Station 3. Second,
Reki took a deep breath.
we will consider all personnel infected and therefore a lost cause, unless they are in the science and research team. If that's the case, Command has instructed they be placed in EPBs.
Lost cause, she'd said, meaning Command didn't expect anyone else to be alive, but if they were, the team was to terminate them on sight. He knew Reki had carefully phrased her statement so as not to spook Harvey, but Zilph thought the man was smart enough to get the gist.
Li Xiao and I will remain at triage. Yuri, Griggs, Zilph, and Harvey will head to Station 2. Any questions?
A moment of silence passed.
Excuse me,
Harvey said.
Why am I going?
Before Reki could answer, he mumbled.
Never mind. Any other questions?
You and Li Xiao are our rear guard, Griggs said.
We can expect assistance if required.
Reki nodded.
I'll share those plans with you while you're en route.
In other words, Zilf thought, there are things Harvey can't or doesn't need to hear, but her team did. Zilf had muted his mics and no one heard the long sigh he blew between his teeth. Nothing about this mission had made sense, and this was just more of the same. Any additional tools we need? Zilf asked.
Not to my knowledge,
She said, the words unnaturally staccato.
Refuel, rearm, and recharge life support. That's about all. Excellent.
Griggs said.
I'm already ready.
I'll be back, Zilf said. Since Station 1 had power, Yuri had simply connected his suit station to the triage outlet. Zilf stood against the 3.5-meter-tall rectangle of black material. A hose connected to his suit removed waste from the system, including skin cells, sweat, and other bodily secretions. He didn't feel a thing except embarrassment at the fact he was being bathed by a machine and he'd already shit his pants.
How many times have you been to Station 3?
Reki asked Harvey. She did so on the common comms, which meant Command had either authorized the question or she'd decided her team needed to know, and to hell with what Command thought.
Once,
Harvey said.
In a consulting capacity. That was 5 days ago. 5 days?
Reki asked.
A day or so before the outbreak reached Station 1? Yes,
Harvey said. The cleaning cycle ended and a new hose connected. Fuel for the suit, atmosphere solution, nutrients. The status meters on his HUD rose to their highest levels, and the hose disconnected. A slight vibration started in the collar on his tool arm, followed by an electric tingle across his skin. The vibration ceased, and a new HUD message appeared. Plasma refueled. He nodded nonchalantly and stepped away from the suit station to rejoin Reki, Harvey, and Griggs.
What did you see?
Reki asked.
Not much. They took me through the umbilical and about 20 meters or so inside. A woman who called herself Beatrice wore an environmental suit with a blacked-out visor. It could have been anyone in there,
Harvey said. The nervous tension in his voice didn't seem to be manufactured now. Instead, it had the ring of a waking nightmare, or what had become one.
4 more people stood in the hall, all wearing suits like hers. They didn't say anything or do more than keep their hands on their weapons. Weapons?
Griggs asked.
Rifles, like yours,
Harvey said, pointing. From inside the triage bubble, Li Xiao said,
What did they want you to look at?
Harvey sighed.
A very ill biological male. Dark striations threaded through the dermis that appeared to intersect with his veins and arteries. In addition,
He stuttered a bit.
the outer dermis seemed more like congealed liquid than actual skin cells. Slime?
Griggs offered. Zilf suddenly remembered what they'd seen in the emergency tunnel.
In simple terms, yes.
Harvey said.
They had run every test they could, and had run out of ideas as to what it was or how to cure it. They show you any data?
Li Xiao asked. Zilf glanced at the bubble and saw her at a portable hollow terminal. Apparently she had either already analyzed or was in the process of analyzing whatever samples she could. If an entire Shinsho research team hadn't had a clue, he doubted she'd fare better.
Yes,
Harvey said.
although they wouldn't show me the cellular analyses, merely the chemical makeup. Fucking non-disclosure.
Yuri mumbled. Reki took in a sharp breath over the comms. Zilf's skin suddenly itched. Reki had just issued Yuri a warning of a sorts. Keep your thoughts to yourself and remember others are listening. Harvey ignored the comment.
The makeup included multiple stable isotopes. Well, I assume they're all stable. I hadn't even considered that orthophosphates could be that complex.
Phosphates? Zilf asked. Harvey sighed.
You need those for biochemistry. Your DNA depends on them, in fact, along with sugars and acids.
Li Xiao mumbled something in Neo-Mandarin. From the tone, Zilf was sure it was a curse.
Did they say what he was exposed to?
Reki asked. Harvey shook his head.
No, they wouldn't tell me that. The only answers they gave were with as little explanation as possible. Just the facts of what was happening to him, no more than that.
The squad fell silent. Zilf half expected the private comms to come to life, but they didn't. To be honest, he didn't feel like talking to anyone at that moment either. The idea that Station 3 had been mucking around with genetic engineering or something similar left him cold. No corporate entity was allowed to interact with xenobiology unless explicitly approved by the Oversight Board. That approval had yet to be given to any world that had not been studied for decades to prove environmental damage wouldn't be catastrophic. After all, wherever humans interacted with the galaxy, they always left their mark. He didn't think the advisory boards were all that concerned with ruining an alien biome so much as they were about lawsuits if said biome attacked humans settling there, or gave them all some incurable, deadly disease. Still, here was Shenzhou with a fuel refinery in a deuterium-rich ocean and the hastily tacked-on research facility to boot. Station 3 wasn't supposed to be here, Zilf was sure of it. If they'd found a complex life form, would they have bothered reporting it? Especially if they'd found the thing after spending billions to bring the refinery online? Good question, Zilf thought. He imagined the answer was definitely no. And once you were in the hole of several billion credits, what was a few more billions in fines if he got caught? Zilf wanted to punch something. The people who died in the barracks died because someone broke quarantine. He swiveled his helmet to glare at the man he'd found in the barracks, whatever his real name was. He'd been inside Station 3 when whatever had happened. So what was he doing here? Griggs cleared his throat.
Can you tell us what they were doing in there?
No hesitation from Harvey this time.
No, I can't, because I don't know.
Sounded genuine. Harvey? Zilf asked. What about the man from Station 3, the one we met in the barracks?
I don't know him,
Harvey said.
Never met him before he showed up in the med bay. Then he attacked one of the staff and fled into the barracks. By then, we'd already locked things down, more or less.
Zilf cocked his head. He came here after the infection began? Harvey nodded.
Yes. By the time he got here, we already had a dozen corpses. Then what got your people sick?
Reki asked. The doctor shook his head.
I've no idea. The airlock between 2 and 3 is rated for just about anything, I guess. I wore a pressure suit before Station 3 even opened the entrance to the outer airlock door. Considering the decontamination procedures, I don't see how I could have brought it back with me.
When Reki broke the awkward silence, Zilf heard a twinge of anger in her voice, or perhaps just good old-fashioned impatience.
Got here somehow. Anyone else enter that area with you?
Harvey nodded.
Zhao 2 facilities manager, Tyler Fajad. Is he among the dead?
Li Zhao asked.
I don't know,
Harvey said.
I haven't seen him since the emergency call to Station 2. And the outbreak.
Reki said.
And the outbreak.
Harvey echoed with a nod.
So you've been piling up bodies for days, but you haven't seen anyone that entered Station 2 for the emergency call?
Reki asked.
Correct. The only staff that responded to the call were those off duty who were on call. The rest were sleeping in the rec area or actually working in the refinery.
Harvey paused a beat.
Wasn't too long before we were a little busy trying to keep people alive to worry too much about Station 2. You didn't send a search party?
Yuri asked.
Once comms went out, I closed the station per regulations.
Harvey said.
The quarantine barriers are up, and the airlock's non-functional.
Unless you have an override, Zilf said. Harvey glanced up at him.
I wouldn't know about that,
he said.
You have such a thing?
Reki chuckled.
Zilf has a lot of toys at his disposal. He and Yuri can handle anything you throw at them.
Harvey exhaled a shuddering breath.
That's good.
He and Reki's icons disappeared from the squad channel. Yuri connected to Zilf via private comms.
What the fuck is going on?
Your guess is as good as mine, Zilf said. You probably know better than I do. Is that patient going to make it?
The infected one?
He could hear Yuri licking his lips.
Fuck no. She'll be dead in an hour. The asshole from Station 3? He doesn't appear to be infected.
How's that work? Zilf asked. Nearly everyone else is.
Caban's not giving us everything,
Yuri said.
I don't think Harvey is either.
Shenzhou's security protocols, Zilf said quietly. Be a mushroom. Do the job.
Look, Zilf. Leaky reactors, burst plasma containment fields, earthquakes, shattering foundations. I can deal with all of that. I can even deal with putting down hostiles, or ending someone who has no chance.
That last sentence held more than a hint of pain.
Biological terrorism, or whatever the fuck this is, gives me the creeps.
Zilf smiled uneasily. He knew exactly how Yuri felt. There's a good thing about biologicals, though.
And what's that?
Yuri asked. Zilf tapped his tool arm. They roast well. Yuri said nothing for a moment.
Sometimes you'll scare me, Zulf. Squad,
Reki said over the general comms.
Harvey will lead you to the tube. Once you're in there, comms might get spotty. Griggs, lead and use your best judgment.
Boss, Zulf said, are we weapons free, including damage to the infrastructure? Reki put her armored hands on her hips.
We're under kilometers of water, and you're asking if you can wreck shit? It is a good question.
Yuri said with a nod.
We may need to cut through a lot of bulkheads. Command has said nothing about the real estate. Best judgment as always, but I'd rather you come home alive and Shensho file an insurance claim. Got it?
Zulf nodded. Just wanted to make sure. He pointed at Yuri. He's got an itchy trigger finger.
That might be a good thing,
Li Zhao said.
Whatever you do, do not jettison your suit. If you do, you might end up like the one you found. She's not going to be around much longer. Thanks for the warning,
Griggs muttered. He'd walked within 2 meters of them. Zulf quickly ran status checks on the suits, including Li Zhao's and Reki's. They might be the rear guard, but that didn't mean they weren't exposed to the same hazards. The last thing Zulf wanted was to be more than halfway to Station 2 and try and walk Li Zhao or Reki through the protocol steps to reboot a suit. Once satisfied, he gave Reki the thumbs up. Reki spoke without inflection.
If Station 2 is unstable, you come back. If Station 3 is unstable, you come back.
Copy, Zulf said, Yuri and Griggs echoing him.
Go wreck 'em,
Reki said. Hoorah! The team said through the channel. Harvey glanced from one member to the other as if unsure of what to say. Chapter 12. It didn't take Yuri and Zulf more than a minute to remove the ENG and suits containers from the lift and inside the dock. In a way, Zulf didn't like the fact they weren't taking the 2 containers to Station 2, but Station 1 had been declared their readout. What's more, unless they could use another elevator, the entire team would have to come back here anyway. While he and Yuri finished stowing the containers, Zulf ran through the QM lists and loadouts for each of their suits. By the time he and Yuri had boarded the lift to join Harvey and Griggs, Zulf had studied them multiple times. He still felt as though he was missing something, but couldn't put his finger on what it was.
Reki,
Griggs said as the lift hatch closed.
We're heading down now. Copy. Stay in touch.
A new squad channel came to life for just the 4 of them. Griggs shuffled forward and activated the lift.
Here we go,
he said, and pressed the button. The lift shuddered before smoothly accelerating downward. Unlike with their previous trip, this part of the lift shaft wasn't transparent. It was impossible to see the water or even the rest of the station structure. They couldn't even see through the lift hatch. The exterior of the shaft had been opaqued. He wasn't sure, but he imagined that after they'd finished retrofitting Station 2 to connect with Station 3, and before they brought back all the personnel, the engineers had used automatons to put the new shielding in place. Zulf unmuted his mic. Notice anything different about the shaft?
Yes,
Yuri said.
Nothing to see. I'll be damned,
Griggs said. He gestured to the lift hatch.
I hadn't noticed that until now. We could see through it before. And there were no portholes,
Harvey said, knowing what the next logical question would be.
But you can see where they covered them up.
Griggs flicked an armored finger against the lift's bulkhead in annoyance.
Reki didn't give us a schematic of Station 2, which means Command didn't want us to have one. So, Avi, once we hit the dock, Yuri, Zulf, and I will clear the area. Do not leave the lift until you are told to do so. Understood? Copy,
Harvey said with a nod.
Since I'm your map, I guess you're going to protect me?
Yuri reached out and gently placed his massive tool hand on Harvey's shoulder.
Like a bear to her cub.
Without a beat, Harvey said,
Don't bears eat their cubs?
A moment of awkward silence ensued, and Zulf was happy for it. Shark swims, but turtle thinks. Right now was a good time to be the turtle. He brought up the loadouts again, scrolled through each, and finally found what he hadn't seen before. Harvey didn't have an aquatics package. Zulf ground his teeth hard. If for some reason Harvey had to travel in water, it wouldn't take long for him to sink. Something to keep in mind, he told himself. Reki would more than likely have his ass for the oversight, but he'd make sure to document it in his action report. If it became a problem on the mission, she'd know a little sooner.
So the refinery workers used this tube?
Yuri asked.
Yes,
Harvey said.
Every shift, to and fro. We've been on this can for minutes already. How long does it take?
Harvey sighed.
About 10 minutes. Are we there yet?
Griggs muttered in a high, childlike voice. Zilf grinned despite himself. It was something he'd said to his own father on more than one fishing expedition. As a child, he couldn't wait to get out into the ocean, to have the chance to swim or fish, find something he'd never seen before. As he got older, the annoying question had fallen out of his vocabulary. He learned to simply enjoy the water splashing by the foils and rooster tail of frothy purple and pink it left in its wake. Proto whales, attracted by the sound, occasionally chased the boat or pulled within 10 meters to spray geysers of the ocean water into the air that rained down upon the speeding boats. The proto whales, each at least 7 meters in length and 3 meters wide, were perhaps the ocean's smartest mammals. They were also the most gregarious, sometimes to the point of annoyance. It was illegal to hunt them or desecrate their corpses, even if one washed up on the beach. The clerics had decreed the proto whales to be Allah's gift to Zilf's alien ocean and world, and therefore they should be considered holy. Allah had not gifted New Persia to its human settlers, but merely allowed them to live there. It was perhaps the most secular decree on the planet, and regardless of faith, Zilf had never heard of an instance of the animals being harmed or violated. New Persians, atheists, or Orthodox pulled their nets when they saw the creatures, rerouted their fishing lanes for mating season, and did their best to keep from disturbing the proto whales. Zilf would likely never return to New Persia, but imagined that 1,000 years from now, those proto whales would still be treated as equals to humanity and allowed to rule their undersea world. Humans had already ruined too many planets to make the mistake again, he hoped.
What was that?
Griggs said, breaking Zilf's train of thought.
What was what?
Yuri asked. Harvey said weakly.
I saw it too. What?
Yuri asked again.
Smear of color. Kinda greenish.
Griggs said.
You know, like what we found in the emergency tunnel.
Zilf turned to look at Harvey.
How's that possible? Wait.
Yuri said.
What about the green smears in the tunnel? We saw them on some of the bulkheads. A substance like...
Griggs reached for a word, didn't find it, and instead said,
snot. Like dried snot. Oh.
Yuri said dumbly.
You think one of the infected left it?
Sure of it, Zilf said. But they'd have to get into the lift shaft to do that. He paused a beat. Damn it.
What?
Griggs asked. The inside track of the lift, Zilf said. There have to be maintenance access points, otherwise the only way to service the lift would be to come down the shaft. There have to be other ways in.
Shit,
Yuri said.
So they could have traveled from Station 1 to 2. Or vice versa,
Harvey said, a shiver in his voice. The G-forces that had pushed them backward receded until they began pulling. Zilf's suit easily accommodated the change, keeping him from having to exert any resistance to keep from falling forward.
That's smoother than usual,
Harvey said. Zilf grinned. It's the suit.
Of course,
Harvey said.
We usually have to rely on our mag boots.
Speaking of magnetics, Zilf said, electromagnetics in particular, your tool arm has a stunner. Look for it in the HUD. Get acquainted with how to activate it.
A stunner?
Harvey asked.
Where? Oh, I see.
His words drifted off.
Only good against humans? Nothing not biological? Unshielded ones at that,
Griggs said.
A low setting will make someone uncomfortable. High might kill them, usually won't, but it will make damn sure they won't be getting up.
Harvey raised his arm a few centimeters, and blue light glowed on his armored knuckles.
Just punch forward,
he said as if he were reading. Zilf pushed down on Harvey's tool arm, effectively disarming the stunner. Careful, no training time on this one. If you want to practice, wait until we get off the lift.
Oh,
Harvey said.
Sorry, I wasn't.
Yuri laughed.
As bad as the rest of us when we get new toys.
The lift shuddered and the deceleration slowed. It was finally coming to a stop.
Ready up,
Griggs said, and motioned for Harvey to join him at the rear bulkhead and into one of the corners. Yuri took the left side of the lift hatch, while Zilf took the right, each of them crouched in cover. When the lift completely halted and the yellow light above the hatch turned green, Zilf nodded to Yuri, and Yuri opened the hatch. The dock opened into complete darkness. Zilf immediately switched his visor to low light and set his suit lights to ambient. The dock, even larger than Station 1's, greedily swallowed the light. Even with the filters set to maximum, he couldn't see the far bulkhead. Griggs sucked in a breath.
Thought Reki said they had power. She did,
Yuri responded. He crept over the threshold, Zilf panning left to right to provide cover. Unlike Zilf, Yuri had narrowed the focus and set his forward-facing suit lights to full. Through Yuri's cam feed, Zilf watched the beams easily lance through the darkness and hit a bulkhead some 40 meters away. Griggs? Zilf asked. Griggs moved forward to cover Yuri's flank.
Find me an interface,
he said. Zilf killed his lights, activated the optic menu, and ran a frequency search. 15 pings came back, everything from HVAC to suit charging stations. Each had been locked out by sysop. He found the main power generator in the list, smashed the lockout with 2 commands, and activated the generator. The dock's overhead lights slowly rose in brightness like an artificial dawn. No longer distracted, Zilf moved to the center of the lift to block Harvey from any threats. The dock, if you could call it that, was a junction between the refinery and another module. Thick, transparent aluminum bulkheads separated the ingress-egress for the refinery from the massive machinery that made up what looked like a dozen modules. Shenzhou had built big. The condensers and cooling stacks rose 20 meters in the air, catwalks and lifts surrounding the machinery like cobwebs. Zilf followed the piping, as much as he could from here, and saw where the fuel product came out. It was a mere 10 meters from the partition. The other side of the dock appeared to connect to a personnel module. Break room and lockers, Zilf thought. It was the area where incoming workers suited up and off-shift workers unsuited took decontamination showers, recycled their shift clothes, dressed in generic jumpsuits, and headed back to Station 1 for dinner, drinks, a little recreation, maybe even of the sexual kind, and got their mandated 6 hours of sleep before starting their day all over again.
Holy shit,
Yuri said.
How many modules? 12? 20?
My guess is 12, Zilf said. Difficult to tell from here.
You're not counting the infrastructure below,
Yuri said. Griggs growled low in his throat.
Squad, are we clear?
This area, the dock itself, had no cover for hostiles, no way to ambush the squad. It was more or less as safe as it could be. Or was it? Zilf looked upward, scanning for vents. 10 meters up, and they all appeared to be intact. No signs of slime, either. Clear, Zilf said.
Clear,
Yuri echoed. Zilf walked further into the dock and headed for the personnel hatch. Yuri subconsciously moved to cover the hatch leading from the dock to the refinery floor. The dock might be clear, but anyone could come through those hatches at any moment, or could if the systems were online. Still, old habits died hard.
Harvey,
Griggs called.
You can come out of the lift.
Zilf watched Harvey tentatively step out of the elevator, his helmet constantly moving as he got his bearings. He heaved a sigh.
Everything looks normal to me, except there's usually a lot of sound and people milling about.
Raising his eyebrows, Zilf turned on his external mics. The drone of some distant piece of machinery filled the dock, although he thought it might be coming from the floor more than anywhere else. Something's running in the refinery, Zilf said.
He's right,
Yuri said.
Doesn't sound like all of the refinery, just a small part of it.
Griggs nodded.
We can check on that after we re-establish comms. Harvey, where's the control center? Up. We have to take a lift from the refinery floor,
Harvey said.
Is there any point to going inside the barracks?
Griggs asked. Harvey shrugged.
Only if we're looking for survivors. We're not,
Griggs snapped.
Okay, squad, we're going into the refinery. Zilf, can you bring up the systems?
Of course, Zilf said. Already found them all. He activated the refinery airlock, the suit decontamination chamber, and attempted to bring up the surveillance system. That last was non-functional. An array of lights came to life at the far end of the trans-aluminum partition. The chamber spanned across the transparent bulkhead and into the refinery space.
If it's the usual size,
Yuri said.
Should be able to take us all at once, but we'll be cramped.
Zilf remained at the personnel hatch. Covering, he said.
You heard the man,
Griggs said.
Come on, Harvey. Show us the way.